Extra long thread from Brian Cates at Draw and Strike. Truly an epic thread. Trump's masterful use of that video during the daily national emergency briefing absolutely destroyed the Democrats and fake news media's talking point that he ignored or didn't do anything in the early days of the pandemic. Jonathan Karl of ABC News was reduced to sputtering that he demanded to know who produced that video because it looked like Trump had just played a campaign video during what was supposed to be a national emergency briefing, not a campaign rally. The worst dirty trick anybody can ever play on Democrats and the DNC media complex, but I repeat myself, is to play their own words back to them. The memory hole is very real on the left. It's how they function. They can't function without it. Events must be forgotten. Their cool new talking point over the last month is that Trump did not take any real action to stop the spread of this virus in the early days. Pelosi's even started a fun new committee to investigate what this president knew and when he knew it and why he didn't do something. This vital new talking point around which they have centered their entire response to President Trump and his national emergency team depends on people not knowing what actually happened less than 3 months ago. Not knowing or being willing to not remember. Long thread coming. When I say being willing not to remember, that might strike you as being exceedingly strange, but I've been observing the left for well over 40 years at this point. I am 56. Before they set out to brainwash everyone else, guess who these people brainwash first? They brainwash themselves first by rigid conditioning of their own minds. See, there's a belief out there that while the base, the people at the bottom, are all brainwashed zombies, the top people are Machiavellian commanders cognizant of the truth. That's actually backwards at this point. Only the most fervently brainwashed people rise to the top of the DNC political and media machines. If you've noticed, dealing with these people is like dealing with cultists. You are not alone. You can't be a committed, avowed, activist leftist in the politics or the media unless you have trained your own mind how to handle the truth when confronted with it. You see, people like Pelosi, Schumer, and many of these media reporters do this all the time. And the reason Orwell's novel 1984 is the bane of all actual fascists and totalitarians is because no other literary work ever so succinctly and clearly explained why the past is so important to controlling the present and shaping the future. And leftism is all about lying about the past. They literally have to in order to continually shape the present moment to their advantage. So, the memory hole is very real and very necessary to these people. They must have it. And when I say memory hole, let's be clear what it is. It's their version of events. They not only just deny certain events took place, if they do admit it, only their version of that event is allowed to be discussed or held as being true. Nobody else's, only theirs. When you deal with the progressive left, you are dealing with an organized movement that is literally rewriting past history at every moment. The moment something happens, the party decides how it really happened, and their version of it is the only official version. Let me tell you why these people hated Andrew Breitbart with the white-hot passion of 1,000 suns. He showed conservatives how to take the memory hole away from the left by confronting them with the wrong version of the past. A big part of the role of the new media that Andrew played such a big part in building is that he was the trailblazer who recognized the crucial role the memory hole plays on the left. As I said, and I'm going to stress this, they cannot function without it. They want the memory hole. They need that memory hole. All their talking points they are using today are exposed as lies if people remember what was said as little as 2 weeks ago. So they can't have that. And time and again, when they were right in the middle of pushing a vital new talking point to try to control the national conversation on a particular issue, here came Breitbart with audio and video playing back for them what actually happened previously. He brought the past. Andrew said this repeatedly over the years. People remember him saying it, but I don't think they fully grasp why he was saying it. He said, the dirtiest trick you can play on a leftist is to play their own words back to them. Why is it a dirty trick to these people? Because you are literally dealing with a cult that creates its own version of the past in order to shape the present so they can maintain and expand their power. It's all about power and holding on to it. These people have raised rewriting history to an art form. When they did not have a new media to contend with, the left could mostly rewrite history how it saw fit and shape the present national dialogue on most issues. Only their version of the past was seen in the public square. The internet and rise of new media changed all that. Shaping the present to protect or expand their political power can only be done if you have absolute control over the past. This is not theory. I'm about to give you concrete examples of these progressive leftists doing this since January of this year. People who've shaped their own minds to instantly discard anything that conflicts with the party's version of events, suffer a brain lock when they are confronted with what I'll call the real past instead of the party past. That's what Trump did to these reporters yesterday. The progressive left in the Democrat Party and the DNC news media, but I repeat myself, had already extensively rewritten the history of the past 3 months in order to shape the present political present. This is their power to shape present events to their agenda. All the real events that actually occurred had gone straight into the memory hole. And in the place of those real events, the party had substituted their own fake version of the history, which they have spent weeks confronting Trump and his emergency team with at these briefings. As Alex Phillips shows in that video I linked in the first tweet of this thread, the cultists in the briefing room were absolutely incensed at watching the real history being shown to them in that video, being played right in their faces. This is not the official party history. When that video was over and you saw the reporters in the room reacting to it, I want you to fully grasp what you were observing. You're watching cultists of the party that rewrites history throw a tantrum at being confronted with the real past and not the party past. Most of that video was Trump and his team playing the fake news media's own words back at them with the dates visible on the screen. Why would the simple act of that piss these people off beyond measure, to the point that Jonathan Karl angrily calls this a huge breach, a violation? Karl angrily demands to know why Trump is playing a campaign video at a serious national emergency briefing. and Trump lets him have it. Trump has to do this because the lying Democrats and the lying DNC media, but I repeat myself, are lying to the public during this pandemic. The fake news press has spent the past month and a half relentlessly trying to substitute the real history of what happened in the early days of this pandemic with their own fake history so they can use the fake history to attack this president during a national emergency. And Trump completely blew up the fake history they had so carefully constructed and relentlessly pushed for the past 45 days by bringing the real past into the press briefing. Here's how you know what Trump did caused these cultists massive mental anguish. In a 5-minute period, after Trump had just played the video that demonstrated the real history that completely blew up the fake history, their network had been relentlessly pushing for weeks. Here's what CNN put up on the screen. I want you to pay particular attention to one of them. I'll save that one for the last. Here are the 4 chyrons on CNN. Angry Trump turns briefing into propaganda session. Trump refuses to acknowledge any mistakes. Trump melts down in angry response to reports he ignored virus warnings. And finally, the kicker. Trump uses task force to try and rewrite history on coronavirus response. That's right. The people who spent 45 days furiously rewriting the real past so they could construct a fake past that they could use to control the present moment and make this president look like a massive liar, accused him of doing what they've been enthusiastically doing. As Alex Phillips points out, if Trump had just gotten up and read from a timeline quotes from mainstream media TV hosts or top Democrats while giving the dates, the reporters in the room would just mock him and dismiss it as lies. But in video form, watching and listening to their own networks, that is why the video is so powerful. The President of the United States of America confronted the history rewriting cultists with the real history, their own real history, not the fake history they manufactured to try and seize control of the present moment. There is a moment in the film Labyrinth in which young Sarah is being entreated by the Goblin King to surrender herself to him. All his previous tricks have failed, and that's the moment she finally defeats him forever by coming to a sudden realization. You have no power over me. Like the Goblin King, played to perfection by the late great David Bowie, the fake news media and their political masters have only one real trick they use to get and keep influence and power over others. They convince you they have that power. And once you see through the deception, that trick never works on you again. So, if you want to see why these people can't beat Trump, it's because he learned to see through this history rewriting cult's one trick decades ago. Once you realize what a crucial function the memory hole plays for these cultists, you can have endless amounts of fun confronting them like a true happy warrior does with their own words and actions in video and audio and in written form. There's a word we've come to use to describe the kind of history rewriting the progressive left is having to do these days. See, this process used to be gradual. It used to be done slowly, over time, a period of weeks, months, even years, but not in the digital age. In the digital age, the history rewriting cult has to start its work instantly, and it has to produce its new history to replace the real history very quickly. The word we've come to use to describe this frantic process is gaslighting. And what this president did yesterday through one simple act, playing a video of the Democrats and DNC media's own words about the pandemic in the early days with the dates establishing the timeline, is that he utterly destroyed their frantic gaslighting. Here's why they hate us. They relentlessly use the memory hole. We don't. We're not going around actively conditioning our own minds to forget anything that contradicts what the party is saying today. We don't think or behave this way. They do. This is why they have such an emotional response to being confronted with the real past instead of the party-approved past. You are destroying their programming. And trust me on this, a lot of effort and time goes into creating that programming and keeping it in place. This is why when they realized what the president was doing with that video, he was playing at the daily press briefing yesterday, putting it right in their faces as the entire country was watching. People at CNN were literally losing their minds in absolute rage. I said a long thread, didn't I? Here's the next section of it. Why the great rage at having the party history ripped up in front of their faces? What is actually being attacked by this that strikes so close to home that it provokes this reaction? And the answer is this. The cult that relentlessly rewrites history does this to maintain one simple truth, which no one can ever be allowed to touch. The self-image zealot leftists have of themselves, their own inner concept of their being the most moral, superior, and perfect beings in existence. The effort that goes into maintaining this self-image of themselves is considerable. And when you destroy the party's version of the official history, or something like Trump's pandemic, you are also touching their self-image. I've been fascinated by watching this dynamic in play for 40 years now. So back in 2012, I wrote this long think piece about what I dubbed liberal pathology. Individualists and strongly independent people don't thrive on the progressive left for very real reasons, which I go into at length in that article. From the 2012 column, progressives are not individualists. They seek herd membership, and status among the collective is established by displaying love of conformity. This is why groupthink commitment to the accepted group view is so vitally important to the left. You are dealing with people who are very susceptible to the politically correct methods of controlling thought, behavior, and speech, who are taught from the time they join the herd to self-condition their own minds to believe whatever Big Brother is saying today. What Big Brother was saying yesterday, a week ago, or God forbid, a full year ago is irrelevant. What Big Brother was saying a week or a year ago does not help shape the present moment and help Big Brother maintain power and influence over the party. When you watch the reporter's actions after having been made to watch that video of the real history that totally destroyed Big Brother's version of what happened, you are literally watching brainwashed people fighting to preserve their party identity. These are people who seek herd conformity, whose rise to the top was based on their constantly demonstrating their fealty to Big Brother, through their having developed assiduously the ability to forget the past and enthusiastically endorse whatever the party line is today. If it sounds like I'm describing the fanatical communist apparatchiks under Stalin, or the zealots waving around Mao's little red book, that's because today's progressive left comes from the same philosophical movement, although until very recently they vehemently denied this fact. Brainwashing yourself to be a good little communist isn't just for the devotees of Lenin or Mao or Che any longer. Much of the progressive left in America today came through an academia steeped in the philosophy of the Frankfurter School and Herbert Marcuse. Being in America, the committed communists had to be clever about how they went about subverting American institutions. They went after U.S. academia first. Today, the progressive left has so successfully taken over U.S. academia, students are taught to shriek like banshees at anybody who publicly expresses wrong thought that challenges the party's official groupthink. Every single reporter that reacted emotionally to that video yesterday came out of that academic system, has spent likely decades of their lives training their minds to enthusiastically love whatever Big Brother is saying today and memory holing the past. That's why you notice them reacting so emotionally to the video presentation. They can't hide it, and they are certainly not faking it. It hit them right where they live, right in the center of their own self-image. And remember, the hate they have for people who do this kind of thing to them, who so completely and totally blow up their gaslighting in a way it completely exposes their big brother to mocking, ridicule, and the truth. That hate is very real. I've seen it. Let me remind you just a bit how the progressive left reacted when Andrew Breitbart died. They literally danced on his corpse. Here's just one of the reasons nobody misses Gawker. Andrew Breitbart. Big deal. Big coronary. Big corpse. I watched this unfold for days after his passing. From the Washington Examiner, liberals celebrate death of Andrew Breitbart. I will never forget it. Another from RollingStone.com, Andrew Breitbart, death of a douche. They were really hoping the new media was so dependent on him it would flounder and collapse without him. Fat fracking chance, you losers. Let me tell you something. You wound these people on a very deep and personal level when you will not let them have their precious memory hole. When you do not let them rewrite the history they are desperate to rewrite. You'd better be prepared to be hated if you are going to spend your career pulling stuff out of that memory hole and confronting the cult that rewrites history with the real past instead of the fake past they've been working so hard to create and sell to the public. Well, I'll tell you this. Trump isn't scared of these guys. He welcomes their hate because he very clearly sees the damage these people have been doing not just to this country but to the entire world. And he's not putting up with it. And neither did Andrew, and neither am I. I'm a happy warrior, pulling the real history out of the memory hole and rubbing their faces in it every chance I get. I'm going to help the president fight this cult. As these losers frantically try to rewrite the history of stuff that happened just weeks or even days ago, I'm going to be right there, blowing up their gaslighting with the truth. You may have noticed what they have to try to gaslight about is getting even more difficult. During this pandemic, the entire country is focused on this, watching the briefings. The cult that rewrites history would prefer to do most of Big Brother's work when nobody is watching or really paying attention, but they are constantly being forced into the open. These cultists are not used to having to frantically work at rewriting history and then rushing out the gaslighting version at such a fast pace while people are watching them. It's incredibly awkward, you see. They keep having to go faster and faster. People tweet at me I'm wrong, it's all about the money. The ideology doesn't matter. Well, bullshit. Even as these countries are bleeding billions of dollars in lost ad revenues and losses, they don't change direction. It is ideology. You are wrong, I'm right. If money was the driving factor, many of these networks would have pursued ratings long ago and started sailing in another direction. CNN is now an utter ratings joke. Where's the profit coming in from now? They don't even place in the top 20 most nights. Again, go back. Watch the video in the first tweet. Carefully observe how professional media reporters from the top news networks reacted to what Trump showed them in this video clip. That emotion is real. They are not faking it. These people are cultists who have conditioned their minds to only love what Big Brother tells them to say today. And Big Brother says Trump didn't take any real action to address the pandemic early on in January and into February. And the reporters had a real emotional response when President Trump used that video to pull Big Brother into the room, bitch slap him, kick him in the balls, jump on top of him, and kick the living shit out of him before driving him from the room in total humiliated defeat. Kind of like that WrestleMania video with a CNN logo when you think about it. So, firmly understand the nature of the enemy you are facing. This is a cult whose own members brainwash themselves to only accept today's narrative, which is based on the party's official history, which they wrote themselves to replace what actually happened. You are dealing with people who have deliberately warped their own minds because it's the only way they can do what they do for a living. They truly do love Big Brother. The end. If you enjoy what I do, please share this content. Thank you.